6 subtle signs that your husband might be struggling with an addiction to pornography or masturbation. And the reason why I call them subtle is because the things that we're going to be discussing in this video are not evident. They are not clearly seen from afar off. They are most likely going to be seen by wives that have had a healthy relationship with their husband over time. But all of a sudden, they just began to notice that the relationship is becoming toxic and it is deteriorating. So those are the signs that we're going to be talking about in this video. So why are we having this conversation? Over the past 3 years, I have helped a lot of men who struggle with this addiction escape from the snares of pornography and experience freedom. But over the last year, the types of men that have been coming to me are men who sadly are at the edge of a divorce. Many of them, their wives found out that they had been watching porn for years, and their wives are heartbroken. They feel betrayed. They feel like the past years of their marriage has been a lie. Many of them feel like they don't even know who they are married to. They cannot recognize their husband. In fact, some are so heartbroken because when they found the pornography that their husbands were watching, they found out that the type of videos that the husbands were watching, the women in these videos are nothing like them. They are literally the opposite of how they look, and it has just made them feel like they are inadequate. So this is a serious issue, and we have to have this conversation. And one of the first things I ask these husbands, when they've been apprehended by their wives is, did your wife ever know before you got married that you were struggling with this addiction? Many of them say one of these 3 things. Many of them say no, she has never asked about it before. Some said that, oh, my wife asked, but when she asked, I told her that I had it under control, but I didn't have it under control. And one of the ones I hear the most is that they will say that, I never told my wife. Why? Because of the dynamics of their relationship. When they started dating their wives, they were like mentors, maybe spiritually, and they didn't want this vulnerability to feel like a weakness on their path, so they never told them in the first place. So this can be very heartbreaking. Imagine a wife finding out that her husband has been struggling with an addiction to pornography for the past 5 years of their marriage. And that's why most times it could even lead to a divorce, because the woman she knows how much she has invested in the marriage, for their children, even in this sex matter, many of them, even while they are pregnant, they do not deny their husbands of sex. So they're always wondering why is this still stepping out? So that's why in this video, we're going to be looking at the 6 subtle signs that your husband might be struggling with this addiction. And I want you to keep in mind that I'm not sharing this video so that you can begin to spy on your husband, begin to check his phone, begin to watch him suspiciously. I'm sharing this video because your husband might be a victim of pornography. This is something that a lot of men have been bound by, from their childhood age. And the better we're able to have this conversation with our husbands, the better our marriages can heal. And I'm not only just going to be showing you the signs. At the end of this video, I'm also going to be sharing, a way that you can bring up this conversation with him. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first sign to be on the lookout for on whether your husband has been struggling with this addiction is that he has shared with you how he deals with temptations over the years. Men are very vocal about the things that matter to them. And because we are goal-oriented, overcoming temptation on a daily basis, because we know how serious, the things of this world are. So overcoming temptation on a daily basis is a big achievement for any man, and he is likely vocal about it. As a wife, he should have always shared with you, his boundaries, the no-go areas, the things that he is using to stay faithful to you, to stay faithful to God. What places does he not go to? What apps does he have on his phone that keep him accountable? These are things you should know. Like for me now, I don't watch every movie. There are movies like Game of Thrones. I don't spend so much time on social media, on Instagram. There are some places I don't go to. Not because they are necessarily bad. It's just, my own form of faithfulness and, devotion to God. And my wife knows many of these things. She knows them so well enough that she can, if she spots any of the things that could trigger me, she can literally block me from them. So do you know some of the boundaries that your husband has in his life? Because I can tell you this for sure, that if he doesn't share those boundaries, there is a huge percentage that he is struggling with an addiction to pornography and masturbation. Because one thing that you should know is that every man should be killing sin, or sin is killing them. The second sign that your husband might be struggling with an addiction is that he requests a lot for personal space. And coupled with that is that he is more secretive, he's more evasive, and he is more defensive. And what I mean by this is that if your husband gets, agitated when you enter a space, maybe you infiltrate a space of his that you before used to be in, but all of a sudden he gets agitated, like maybe you open the door to his office without knocking, maybe you pick up his phone before he wakes up in the morning, maybe you were using it, and all of a sudden you are noticing that he's feeling nervous, or you give him something in the toilet and you didn't knock and he's feeling agitated. This might be a sign that he's struggling with an addiction. Speaking about the toilet, if he spends a lot of time in the toilet, like this is literally a global epidemic. A lot of men have been known to spend a lot of time in the toilet. And, this doesn't always mean that he's struggling with an addiction to pornography, but it is most likely because, yes, even as wives, everybody, that toilet time is like a breather, but, for many men, that spend a lot of time, especially if they go with their AirPods, they go with their earpieces, there's a huge chance that you might be struggling with an addiction to porn. If you're finding this video helpful, please, I would like you to share with somebody, drop a comment, let me know that this is helpful to you because I want a lot of people to learn from this. Let's get back to the video. The third sign that your husband might be addicted to pornography is that he is emotionally distant. One thing that you need to know is that one of the first things that go out of the window, when a man is struggling, is this word, I love you, or those words, I love you. Because it is not easy for a man to say, I love you, to do endearing things, because he now loves other things. And beyond using the word I love you, you begin to notice that he is beginning to avoid eye contact a lot. He's beginning to avoid physical contact. And especially if these are things that you naturally used to do in your relationship, you begin to avoid them. He might say he's stressed, he has a lot of things going on, but that's not always only the reason why. So a lot of endearing gestures just go out the window. Even if your husband was someone that used to spank your bum, when he walks by you and he has stopped, yeah, he could be angry, he could likely be upset with you, but it could also be a pointer that he might be struggling with something. And just a quick side note, a lot of women over the years in their marriage, they begin to get annoyed when their husband spanks them on their bum. And please, if your husband does it, especially in a good way, please don't let him do it, because a lot of women think like, oh, he can't help him. I can promise you that a man can help himself from spanking your bum. And so if you guys have that, culture in your marriage, please keep it up, because it means that you have somewhat of a healthy marriage. The fourth sign to be on the lookout for on whether your husband might be struggling with an addiction to pornography is that he has lost interest in sex. Yup, this is a real thing. Because he's getting his fix somewhere else, the desire to have sex with you begins to go on a decline. And so a couple that used to have sex frequently in their marriage barely now has sex. And regarding loss of interest in sex, one thing you can also notice is that, when your husband asks you for sex, how does he respond when you reschedule? And I'm using the word reschedule because it's not always right to use the word like turn down. Because in many marriages, when a woman is maybe unable to have sex with her husband, and they call it turn down, because many times the wife does not re-engage. And if you're hearing me and maybe you turn down your husband for sex for any legit reason, please be the one to re-engage back. But that's not what we're even talking about in this video, but how does he respond when, you maybe reschedule and say, oh, babe, I can't have sex at this point. How does he respond? Does he go away completely and, like not even ask you again? He's fine. He's not even like he's angry. He doesn't ask you again for the sex, maybe for a week. If he goes just like that and, he's not coming back, hey, babe, you said we're going to have sex again. What's the plan? If he doesn't, he might be struggling with an addiction to porn. Another important thing I would like to note is that, a husband can be, lose his interest in sex because, when a man watches pornography regularly and is masturbating, he doesn't have a high libido anymore, and that is why. So when he's meant to be having sex with his spouse, he's unable to maintain an erection for long. This can be as a result of the amount of porn he watches on a regular basis, or sadly, he might have something we call a porn-induced erectile dysfunction, and this means that your husband is unable to have an erection and stay long because his mind has kind of been trained to only respond to pixels on a screen rather than to his wife. The fourth subtle sign that your husband might be struggling with an addiction is that his sexual desires have changed. If you notice that your husband has begun to make some weird requests and maybe even belittling requests, this might be a big sign. He might begin to ask that, you do some certain positions that he knows you are uncomfortable with. He might even begin to talk about your appearance. He might begin to talk about your energy, and there are healthy ways of discussing your sex life. But if you know that these are boundaries you've likely discussed, then there is a probability that this is a sign. Another subtle sign that you might notice is this: he begins to request for a lot more sex. Maybe you guys used to have maybe 2 rounds, 3 rounds, but right now you begin to notice that he is less satisfied and he wants more rounds, even when he is clearly tired and unable to keep going. This might be because he has watched a lot of pornography, and with the way pornography works is that when you watch one, you keep watching, you keep masturbating, you keep going, and in the end you are never satisfied. So it might be that he is unsatisfied because there is this lust that he is unable to feel. Another one I've heard from a couple wives actually is that their husbands begin to suggest things like erection pills, that maybe you want to use Viagra and things like that. Once you begin to hear that, that's a huge tail sign. The sixth subtle sign, that you might notice is that your husband begins to spend an excessive amount of time online. He's on social media a lot, and this is understandable because with an addiction to pornography, it comes with a lot of siblings. You feel numb, you feel lazy, so this is likely a tell sign that your husband might be struggling with this addiction. And with it, you might begin to notice that search histories are hidden. He's clearing a lot of his tracks online. These are some of the things that come with the addiction. Another one is that he might even be asking you, when are you going to sleep? Are you ready to go to sleep? And it can feel stalkish that he is monitoring your movements. Once you begin to see signs like that, he's likely struggling. So I just remembered one important sign. So I'm going to be giving you 7 signs. One important sign that your husband might be struggling with this addiction is he has become insensitized to sensual content or people. When a man spends a lot of time on porn websites, his reality begins to get warped. And so things that should naturally trigger a man, seeing some sensual things, might not trigger him because his senses have already been dulled. And it's because he sees more intense things on those porn websites. So once you begin to notice that he doesn't respond like he used to, or you're seeing things, maybe bikinis, you go to a beach, you go to even things that are disturbing to you but are not disturbing to him. Maybe you feel like, oh, he's a macho man. That might be a tell sign that he is struggling. If you notice 2 or more of these signs in your husband, I'll encourage you to have a conversation with him immediately. Here is how a rough draft of what you can say would look like. You can say something like this: hey babe, I watched a video recently about how much of a struggle men face with pornography. In the video, they talked about how damaging it is and how a lot of men get hooked on this thing while they were young. Please, I'd like you to let me know, is this something you struggle with? So this conversation can go in one of 2 ways. He can tell you, hey, this is not something I struggle with. And, truthfully, he might not struggle with it. Or he might be honest, actually, and tell you that this is something I have struggled with. Or he can tell you something he has struggled with in the past. Or this is something he is struggling with. Whichever the outcome it is, I don't want you to leave that conversation without a strategy, without a plan. So if it's not something he struggles with, I want you to encourage him to share with you his plans and how you can help him. But beyond that, I want you to put a plan for your family, I'm going to link a video, one of my last videos. I talked about a porn battle plan. It doesn't have to just be about your husband. Pornography is an epidemic right now, and you need systems for your family, you need systems for your children, you need systems for yourself, and you need systems for him. So discuss how you can set up applications, ways you can both be more accountable to each other. And if this is something he confesses and says, hey, I am struggling with this, at that point, I need you to know that this is something that needs to be addressed immediately. If you have, a pastor, a counselor, someone that has struggled with this thing, he needs to go and speak with them. This is also something I do. I have a program that has helped men that have struggled with this thing for 10 years, 20 years. Literally, I helped someone that has struggled with it for 20 years gain freedom. You can sign him up for my program. You can send me a message. I'll maybe put a link in the description on how to go about it. Sign him up, share my videos with him, because it needs to be free. And one other important thing I would like you to know, if this is something he struggles with, by no means, I don't want you to ever feel like this is your fault, or sometimes, the conversation can even go in a way that it can make you feel like, oh, you are the one, you don't give me sex enough, and that is why I resort to porn. This is not a you problem, it's a he problem. In fact, he is likely a victim, but it is his responsibility to break free from this. So I won't want him to ever pin it on you. With all that said, we've come to the end of this video. If you are a man and you by chance watched this video and this is something you struggle with, please reach out to me immediately. And if this video helped you in any way, please like it so that you too can share it with more people that might be in need of this. I've shared so many important things, and I don't want it to just be you that hears it. I want more people to hear and benefit from this. So please share, like, drop a comment, for me, and I'll see you in the next video. I have a ton more videos on this channel that help, anyone that struggles with this addiction. So please check them out, and I'll see you in the next video.